I'm concerned that my advice, one of my favorite pieces of advice to women is do nothing. I love do nothing. If he texts, text him back. If he calls, call him back. If he says, I want to hang out, you say, you want to hang out. You react to him warmly, enthusiastically, quickly, but you don't chase him. And so when a woman says, no, like, you kind of have to chase guys down these days, I don't know what to say to that. I had my mind blown the other day, and that doesn't happen too often when you've been doing the same job for 20 years. You pretty much know what you're going to get. But the reason I had my mind blown was because I wasn't talking to one of my typical clients, a woman in her late 30s who wants to have kids, a woman in her late 50s who's facing an empty nest. I was talking to a 16-year-old cousin of mine. And this took place at a backyard barbecue that we had last week. And she's a attractive girl, great demeanor, just really like happy, inquisitive, pleasant, just like a good kid. And going into her junior year, and I've known her since she's really, really little. So, I don't have that much of a close relationship with her. She's my wife's cousin's daughter, lives about 3 hours away. So I don't know her that well. But when she was sitting down and I was talking with her and her dad, and they were curious about what I did professionally, I shared a little bit, and she laughed. And I was, I don't mind. I've been doing this for a long time enough that I could take a little teasing. And she said, I don't know how you could help me because boys don't ask me out. And again, this is a objectively attractive girl. These days, girls have to ask out boys, and a complete, straight face, no irony. Again, I'm sure that is not the full story, in as much as it can't be completely one-sided that no boys ever ask out girls anymore at all. But if that's her experience, that's her observation, I have to take that pretty seriously. And it really threw me for like a crisis of conscience. It's very important for me to give good dating and relationship advice. And a lot of my dating and relationship advice obviously is based on what I have seen over the years, over many years of being a man. I remember, not getting laid while I was in high school. I remember going on a tear through my 20s and trying to figure out the person I'd settled down with in my 30s, and what it's been like to be married for 15 years. So I've really, and coaching for 20 years. So I've had a lot of life experience to inform me. And yet I can't have the experience of a 16-year-old girl, or I can't really have my finger on the pulse of that. And so what does this mean for, I know you're not as concerned with this, but I'm concerned with this. What does this mean for all my advice if gender roles are completely out the window? And I'm not going to get into the sensitive topics of sex and gender and whether there's a difference between them and trans. I'm not going to touch any of that today. But I do think we've definitely reached some sort of inflection point where what we've assumed are the, if not biological, certainly the sociological roles of men, which I encourage, right? And it's because it's good for women. If I'm a woman, I want a man who calls and plans and pays and takes the lead and makes the first move, tries to get laid and says, will you be my girlfriend? And one day buys a ring and gets down on one knee and says, will you marry me? Like, I didn't find that terribly uncomfortable. I thought that model worked really well for a long period of time. But if people are changing their minds about what works and what is, do I have to change along with it? And I think that's one of the things that's kind of bugging me, because my loyalty, and you may or may not know, nor care, nor appreciate this, but my loyalty is always to the truth, right? Like I'm not a zealot in any way. I heard a metaphor recently that struck me, and I'm sharing it with you because I think it's what I aspire to, and I would hope you could aspire to it as well. You don't want to be the prosecuting attorney in an argument. You want to be the judge. You want to be the impartial judge who takes all the feedback in from all the parties and then tries to make an objective ruling, instead of someone who says, I know what my side is. I'm going to argue my side to the death. If you disagree with me, then you're clearly wrong. I don't want to be that person. And I don't want to be that person as a man or a husband or a father or a dating coach or a New York Jewish atheist liberal. I don't want to be arguing that my way is the highway and that every other point of view is invalid. I'm really looking always for the point on the Venn diagram where we could find a way to share a reality. But what does it mean when my reality is slipping away from me? Does it mean that my advice has always been wrong? Does it mean that I can no longer coach women under the age of, say, 30 if the world that we're creating, that the younger generation is creating, is a world in which it's all blended? So women basically have taken on the role of men have taken on the role of women. And so now nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows who makes the first move. Nobody knows who calls. Nobody knows who plans, who pays. Right? And there's an energetic shift around that. I'm concerned that my advice, one of my favorite pieces of advice to women, is do nothing. Right? I love do nothing. And if he texts, text him back. If he calls, call him back. If he says, I want to hang out, you say, you want to hang out. You react to him warmly, enthusiastically, quickly, but you don't chase him. And so when a woman says, no, like, you kind of have to chase guys down these days, I don't know what to say to that. And that's why I'm saying, I'm talking to you saying, I don't know what to say to that, other than I find it really humbling and not troublesome. I just think it's going to be harder and harder to navigate when people's roles are less clear, like having roles at a company where this person does this person does the admin, this person does the books. Having roles within relationships just delineate things and make them clear. It's not that men and women aren't equal, but when you have the exact same function, it's duplicative. I could see why it might get confusing, and that the dynamic might be more confusing today than it was years ago, even if by good egalitarian feminist principles, we should eliminate the differences and everybody is equal. But I think just because everybody's equal doesn't mean everybody should be identical. Right? It's like equal rights, but I don't think my wife and I have the exact same strengths. I think we complement each other. That's what works. So maybe that just becomes the new model, is trying to find someone who's a complement. We talk about that in Love You, with the assumption that men in general act a certain way. And if that's no longer the assumption, it definitely confuses me. I'm reminded of a story of a friend of mine. And my friend is kind of old school alpha male guy, good looking, rich, etc. And he's got 3 grown daughters, and he went to a party with his oldest daughter. So he's at this point in his 50s, his daughter's in her mid-20s, and party was in Venice, very Gen Z, millennial, woke-ish crowd. And again, forgive the terminology, I don't know what else to use. But he was just really shocked at the energy at this rooftop bar. He said all the women were like powerhouses. I mean, they were like career women, and they knew what they wanted, and they had big plans. And he's like, the guys were like these like soggy, like these wet mops. They were just like, metaphorically, like, okay, can I get you a drink, honey? I'll hold your purse. They didn't have the same focus or the ambition or even the same personality. They were more like kind of like laid back, nice guys, but none of that typical masculine energy that, I grew up seeing, which again isn't always good. I hesitate to say anything lest it be used incorrectly. It's not that masculine energy is in and of itself good. Right? Masculine energy is about self. It's about doing. My ego, my ambitions, my plans, my opinions. So men need to have it. Women need to have that, to have direction and focus. So men need to have men need to have feminine energy. Women need to have masculine energy. And so all I'm saying is that women have more masculine energy, men have more feminine energy. And is it possible that we sort of crossed? And does that mean that there isn't, right, and anything to be said for biology, even though we know testosterone drives men to be different than women? I just think it's a really confusing moment. And I have really more questions than answers. I think it almost concerns me the most as a father, because I'm not expecting anybody who's 16 years old to invest in high-end dating and relationship coaching, both due to the timing in her life and due to the finances of it. But I would hate to give advice that is incorrect or obsolete to an entire generation of women. Maybe you guys can let me know. If you're under the age of 30, feel free to comment below. If you have kids under the age of 30, let me know. Is it true that boys don't ask out girls anymore and girls are the aggressors in relationships? Do girls like that development, or is it just all they know and they're comfortable with it? Do they want boys to step up more? I want to learn. So deep thoughts with Evan Marc Katz. Thanks for listening. I look forward to our next Love You podcast, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.